it's all different. I'm just curious, is that a story of your evolving, or does it go back to what you told us at your first press conference, you adapt to your personnel?
I think you always adapt to your personnel. There's not a system like you'd say, hey, we're going to do this, and then if that's not the strength of your players, I think part of the OTA process for us is getting to understand what the strengths of these players are, and then how do you play to those strengths. You know what I mean? Some teams are heavy running back laden, some teams are heavy wide out laden, some teams the quarterback's just a drop back guy, but he's not a movement guy. You know, it all depends on who you have personnel wise, and then you try to fit in their strengths into the scheme that you're going to run. And we have a lot of really, really good coaches on our staff, so it's also a blending of that, like where they came from and what they feel really confident in doing, and then really making an evaluation of what each individual group, offensive line, tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks, wideouts, do best, and then how do we match that up with a total system and a scheme, because there's enough out there that we've all done, but it's just, you know, the key is matching to our guys' strengths and what they do really, really well.
What is Ashton Genty's potential in the offense, you think?
I mean, Ashton is as talented a back as, you know, as a young guy coming in the league that I've seen. You know, he's really special. His ability to sustain runs after contact, you know, his contact balance is kind of a really rare quality. He's got a low center of gravity, you know, and I think it's tough to get him down, and normally the first guy doesn't. And, you know, and you look at all of the tape of his games last year, and it didn't matter who he played, you know, because they obviously played the Mountain West, but when he played the Oregons and he played the Penn States, you know, you look at how he performed in those games. And I think sometimes you get caught up in just looking at the numbers, but I think it was like 35 missed tackles he created in the Penn State game. Now, Penn State's defense, we played against them, they're outstanding. You know, that was a little bit different league for Boise at that time, but not for Ashton in terms of what he did. So excited to see him. It's different, obviously, as we know, during OTAs, because it's not tackle. We're not taking guys to the ground. I don't think he'll get tackled until we get to our first preseason game. But, you know, I'm really excited. The one thing about him is he's a really quick learner. He also had experience there with Dirk Cutter was his offensive coordinator in his last year. Dirk's been a longtime coach in this league, been a head coach in this league, and is a really, really good football guy. So he came in with a good basis and understanding. And so he's done a great job. He really, really excited to work with him. That's you know, I know everybody in the offensive staff was excited when Spy made that selection.
When you say coach to your strengths, what does that mean with Gino? What is he showing you? What is he?
Well, the beauty of Gino is that Gino's been in multiple systems now, and there's a lot of things Gino can do. You know, so you can't. I don't think you can just pigeonhole him. I think he runs better than people really give him credit for. You look at the 2-minute drive against the 49ers at the end of the game, and he runs it in for the winner. I think he can beat you with his feet. He can keep plays alive with his feet. He's extremely accurate. He gets the ball out of his hand quickly. He can be a movement guy, but he can also be a drop back guy. You know, and that's, you know, Pete and Greg Olson, our quarterback coach, had a great understanding because they've coached him for such a long time. And what we saw, you know, in terms of Pete's evaluation, Noli's evaluation of him, is what I've seen here. You know, I think whatever we fit into schematically, offensively, I think Gino can handle all of that.
You recruited Gino when he was coming out of high school, and obviously you coached his cousin last year.
Yeah.
What's your relationship like outside?
It's great, just because Gino's a football guy. Like, Gino loves ball, you know, and you'll get a phone call after OTA, after phase 2. You know, we'll talk on a Tuesday night about what transpired in that day. And we're going against ourselves. Like, we hadn't gone against the defense yet, but have a conversation about this. And then how do you see this? And, you know, and really lean on him a little bit because of his wealth of experience. And he's been through different coordinators in this league and some really good ones. So, like, hey, how did you know, how did Shane do this when you were with him, or how did Grubb do this when you were with him, and kind of pick his brain that way, and then put together what's the best thing for us going forward. But he's great. Gino's literally like a second coach. You know, when you're in that room with him and Greg Olson, it's, you know, there's a lot of ideas going around, and then it's just a matter of corralling it, because sometimes you can have too many ideas. Like, let's try to do a million things, and then you don't get good at one thing. But, you know, his football acumen is really off the charts. It's impressive to be around him.
Chip, Michael Mayer was the guy that was drafted here with high accolades. You were in the college game when he was doing everything in college, and feels like there's a lot left on the bone there with Michael Mayer. How does he kind of find his way?
How old is he? How old is he?
Exactly.
A lot left on the bone. I mean, he's 23?
No doubt about it.
God, remember when we were 23?
Yeah, right. That was really actually unfortunate. But
you had a rough upbringing then.
Yeah, Rock Valley.
Am I right?
It was too good.
Yeah.
It was too good. But Brock Bowers, he comes in and
Yeah.
sort of takes some of the luster away. But how do you kind of figure out a way to get the most out of Michael Mayer?
I think Mike has been outstanding since I've been here. And for all of us, we came in kind of tabula rasa. We're a blank slate. We watch film of all the players just to kind of get an understanding of what they did, but didn't make any decisions on anything until you see him here. And Mike's been fantastic since day one of the off-season program when we started early in April there, and what he did just in the weight room, what he's done in the meeting room, and then what we did in phase 2, and then what he's continued to do here. So really, really excited about him. And there's never a position anywhere where a coach will say, you know what, we have too many good players. Like that's never the case, especially in this league, because everybody's really talented that you're going to go against. So the more tight ends we can get, the more wideouts we can get, the more running backs we can get, the more quarterbacks you can get, then we'll continue to take them. But I think Mike's been outstanding. And I check, you can play with 2 tight ends in a game at the same time. And sometimes you can play with 3 tight ends, they told me. So maybe we can get to that if we have to. Obviously, you're going to try to attack each team you're playing each week differently, depending on how they defend you. But, to be able to have that ability and have a couple quality guys here, because Ian Thomas has been outstanding, and he's a guy that's played a lot of snaps in this league too. So
You drafted 2 guys that saw a high volume of targets today, in Jack Besh and Dante. What have you really liked from them so far, and how have you been able to see their development?
they're learning, and I think Dante is a unique in terms of he's just a hair under 6'5", and he ran 4.3. There's not a lot of humans on this planet that do that, and I think if you had to draw up an outside receiver, you would pick that type of body type, someone that's got length, someone that's got a huge catch radius, but also has speed. Sometimes you can get a big guy like that, but he can't really run, so they can stay with him. So, you add that speed element to him, his ability to sink his hips, his ability to get in and out of cuts. But for all of those guys, they're all learning a new system. So some of them came from, I think Ashton was probably fortunate coming from Dirk's system at Boise because it's a little bit more pro-friendly. Some other guys are playing up-tempo, throwing the ball all over, one-word calls and going. And so everybody's on a different level when they come in, and it's just a matter of them getting acclimated. And Chris Beatty's doing a great job with those guys, but they've both shown that they're good players, and I will continue to see how they go.
Chip, Gino's leadership is undervalued by a lot of people, but I mentioned to Greg Olson yesterday, can he be a blessing to an Aiden O'Connell just for what he's going to bring to him, his coaching and mentoring him and all of that?
Yeah, Gino can be a blessing to coaches, and I can attest to you to that. I think Gino's special. And so, yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think he's got great leadership qualities. I think everybody is a byproduct of their environment, and I think how Gino came through his career, and you look at the arcs of his career, being a high draft pick and going to New York and then headed to San Diego and then kind of almost restarting his career when he got with Pete. But Pete brought him in as a backup. Russell was there, and then all of a sudden earning the starting job, Russell gets traded, and now Gino gets to show what he can do. There's not a lot of guys that would have shown that resiliency. There's not a lot of guys that would have been persevered through all of that. But I think you can look at him as a younger player, or you could look at him as an older coach and admire the journey that he's been on and just say, because it's hard to talk if you have never walked the walk. And Gino's been in all those shoes, and I think that's one thing that really he's so relatable to everybody in this program, because he's kind of lived that life. He's been a high draft pick, but he's also been a guy that has been told that a team doesn't want him, and so I think until you actually go through that situation, it's hard to kind of fathom. But the fact that he's done it and come out and to be the way he is now is really a testament to him. He's special, and we're really, really excited that we have him. So
Ashton made a lot of headlines when he said you asked him to change his stance.
all right, let's get that clarified.
Okay.
Dylan McCullough, our running back coach, is in charge of stances, steps, alignments, assignments, and techniques. So he talked to him about that. I gave him an analogy of an athlete being in a bent knee position to make a play, and that kind of got blown into. I haven't told anybody on this team to be in any stances because I don't coach a position. So, but it's a bent knee game. Baseball is you look at before the ball snapped in baseball, or the pitch is thrown in baseball, everybody's got their knees bent. In any athletic sport you're playing, you got to bend your knees. And if you got to run a flat route on Fred Warner, you better be in a position to run, because that dude can fly. So all we're trying to do is put guys in positions to make plays, and he's adapted really well from going from here to here. So it literally is about 3 inches. So I really don't think that is that big a deal. So, but he's awesome, and he's such a coachable guy that you can do a lot of things with him. I think he can play in the slot. He can play in the backfield. He can do a lot of different things. So he's special.
Well, how exciting is it for you to have a player like Brock Bowers and to watch his growth and just ascension as a player?
You know, it was neat because Brock wasn't here for the beginning of phase 2 because he was back at Georgia getting his degree, which was awesome. So he finished school up and then came here. So I missed the first 2 or 3 weeks of phase 2. So we didn't see him when the first year, when we got to see everybody our first glimpse. But when he came in here, he was as advertised, and unbelievable work ethic, unbelievable attention to detail. You know, all the things you're looking for in a player, along with just a unique skill set. To have a guy, you know, that big and that athletic and moves in that way is kind of special. So we're really excited about what he can bring for us. So
Do you have something you want to be like the identity of your offense? That's what you want your offense to look like?
JWB. Just win, baby. There was a legendary person in this organization, and it's the truth. There are games you're going to win 9-6, and there are games you're going to have to win 38-37. And do you do enough on each side of the ball in phases to contribute to winning? Because winning in this league is hard. The last team that went undefeated in this league was the 72 Dolphins, so it's been a long, long time. Everybody that's been in this league or spent any time in this league knows how hard it is to win, and it really is just win, baby. And how do you do that? Each week your game plan has to understand who's available, who you're playing against, and can we score enough points that we score one more than our opponent. And that's really hopefully what our identity is that we do enough on our side to help our defense and help our special teams beat whoever we're playing on any given Sunday. So.
Sure, when it comes to the offensive line, obviously there's no pads or really much
Yeah.
contact this time of year, but how do you evaluate those guys at this point? What do you kind of focus on?
It's the most difficult, you know, because there are no pads. And it's how are they picking up schemes? How are they working together? Are they making the right calls? Are they identifying the defense in the proper manner so that we're on the right people? But it's almost like you're looking at their first 2 steps, and then after that, they're pulling out of it, and the D-line's pulling out of it too. You know, there's times where Max will take 2 and then take a step and then just stop because we're not in full pads, and you have to learn to practice in this format because you're going to have to practice this way during the season. Also, you know, you're not going to be in pads every day during the season. So I think they're doing a good job from that standpoint, but you still can't get a full evaluation of them until you get a chance to see them and, you know, practice opportunities, whether it's against other teams or in preseason games or when we get the opportunity in the off season. This off season we can't, but when we get back in late July and August, you'll be able to put pads on, and then we'll be able to see a little bit more out of those guys.
How has it been building that working relationship with Pete Carroll?
It's been great. I knew Pete from my first year as a head coach in the Pac-10. Back in those days, was Pete's last year in the league. So I got a chance to compete against him then and meet him at league meetings and, you know, watch what he had done, and obviously admired the success that he had and the championships that he won when he was at Southern Cal, and then watching him go to the league and the success he had in Seattle. So to get a chance to work with him and see him on a daily basis. I know people that have worked for him, so you always discuss that with him. You know, what's it like working? And it's the same every day. You know, his energy, his consistency, what he brings on a daily basis is positive. But it's not just positive for the sake of being positive. It's just that's kind of how he sees things, and he believes, you know, if you outwork people, if you have a crystal clear vision of what you want to get accomplished, and you can get a group of people to do the same exact thing, then good things are going to happen to you. And I think he's got this team believing. You know, he has his coaching staff believing. So it's been a lot of fun. You get energized when you come in this building every single day.
We're gonna wrap it up with Nick and then Q.
Jacoby Myers has always been considered one of the more underrated players in the league, and now he has a big opportunity ahead of him coming off a 1,000-yard season, now the top wideout. You know, what do you make of Jacoby so far?
Yeah, I think he's versatile. He could play both inside and outside receiver. He's got experience doing both. You know, his ability in terms of catching the football, you know, his drop rate I think is 0. You know, he's just anything thrown in his direction he seems to somehow come down on. I think he's got a really good understanding of coverage and schemes where he knows how to get himself open at the appropriate time. And that's part of it. You know, being a receiver is you have to be where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there with separation and catch a football. And he can do all 4 of those things. So really the leader of that group. And we're young at the wideout spot, but, you know, for those guys to be able to rely on someone like Jacoby to kind of been there, done that. It's been in 2 organizations and was really good at both. And just really happy that we get a chance to work with him and, you know, have at least a vet from him and Trey out there at the wideout spots that can help some of the young guys out there. So.
Coach, how have you seen the evolution of offenses from the time high flying there in Oregon, winning national championship last year, where you are now, back in the NFL, and offensive skill players as well?
Yeah, I mean the game is cyclical. You know, I go back way back with the first time the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry ran the shotgun. They were like, "What was that?" But that's was single wing football that people had been running for all the time. And Dutch Myers and TCU was doing it in the 50s with 5 wide receivers and running around. And everybody thinks, well, they've got all these wide receivers on the field. They did that before. You know, the game goes on and on. If you're a historian of the game, and I enjoy that part of it, but I still think it's still about fundamentals. It's still about who can block the best and who can keep their quarterback clean so that he can throw routes, who can sink, plant, cut, and create separation so that they can catch the football when it's thrown to them. You know, who tackles better on defense? You know, can you make a guy miss in the open field, or does the end block guy make the play? It's still a fundamental game, but it takes ebbs and flows, and it's neat watching its evolution and how it goes from this to this to this, because if the defense has an advantage, somehow the offense catches up, and then they have to change, and then the offense comes up with something new, or something they think is new, but that all they're doing is studying what people did in the way past. You know, you look at some of the things that like Josh Allen's doing, or Lamar Jackson. That's single wing football where you're snapping it to the quarterback, and he becomes an extra back because he's not the running back. He's actually a quarterback that can run, and that's a different level. You had never really seen that in the NFL before, like people that were really going to run the quarterback, you know, because is he going to last and play the next game? Now, when you have 2 special talents like that, you can do that. So it's been fun to watch it, you know, and I think the guys that are really good at it can figure out what's the best thing to apply to the group they have based on the personnel that they have. So I'm always a fan to kind of see what's next. And then once you see what's next, is that applicable to what we do, or is that, you know, that's good, but I don't think because of what we have personnel-wise, that kind of fits what we do. So you just kind of file it away, and then maybe a year or 2 later, if one of those players comes into your program or organization, then you can say, hey, you know, we could kind of start to do a little bit what those guys are doing over there because we have a similar type player. But it's all